Welcome to In-Home Groups, guys. We're so glad you're joining us. It's not weird that we're at Howell, is it?
No, bro.
We're not creepers outside your school.
Let's go Vikings!
Vikings! I think you were just dismissed to your third hour. We heard the bell ring, but hey, we have some exciting stuff for you tonight. Don't worry about school. First of all, fall retreat's coming up in 2 weeks.
How fast, Sam? How far?
2 weeks! 2 weeks! I hope you hear us over these cars. Make sure that you're signing up. Less than 2 weeks, lots of spots left. Let's go.
Coming quick.
Why are we here?
Quick. Well, seriously, we're not here just to play tennis or run around the track. We're just out in Bush Wildlife. It's a place where I love just to go be with God as you continue this series on worship, and we're going to jump in and talk a little bit about worship even when it's difficult.
All right, let's see it.
One of my favorite Disney Pixar movies is the movie Up. It's a great movie about a crazy adventure of an old man named Mr. Fredrickson and an unexpected traveler, Boy Scout named Russell. You know what I'm talking about? Well, in the beginning of the movie, there's a great scene telling the life story of Carl and Ellie Fredrickson. There are no words, but the music tells their story. It's fun, it's beautiful, it's playful, it's happy. It's a great story. It's the way it's supposed to be, right? Life is good. And then, when you least expect it, the music shifts. The piano plays a little softer, quieter. The story takes an unexpected turn. It's emotional and sad, and you see this fun, happy story become a sad and difficult one. Has this ever happened to you in your life? Have you ever felt that shift within you, the sadness? It's not supposed to be this way, right? We have all experienced some sort of sadness in our lives. We can relate to the reality that our life isn't always happy and great. We're not so good at dealing with it, are we? Sometimes we disguise that sadness with anger or sarcasm. We might feel embarrassed because we believe that sadness is a sign of weakness. We can get overwhelmed by it because we don't know how to express that sadness, or we can ignore it entirely because if we're honest, we'd rather be happy than sad, right? Today we're going to continue the conversation about worship and what it means to worship even when life is difficult, even when the music in our life shifts. You know, over the last few years, I've personally experienced sadness from unexpected loss that happened very close to me. About 2 years ago, I got a call from my dad that my brother-in-law, Adam, died unexpectedly. Adam was one of my best friends who I talked to daily. He was one of those people that was always there when you needed them. Do you have people like that in your life? I had so many questions. Why, God? Why Adam? Why now? Not even a year later, while still grieving the loss of Adam, my wife, Courtney, and I are expecting our second child, and we were so excited. Like the movie Up, life was fun and happy, but then the music shifted. Early in the pregnancy, we found out that our baby boy had some serious health issues early in his development. And after many doctor appointments and millions of unanswered questions, we feared the worst would eventually happen. And it did. Our son Louis was born a few weeks early and passed away 2 hours after he was born. You know, I'll never forget holding Louis in my arms right after he was born, and I remember praying out loud while tears streaming down our faces, God, this isn't fair. It's not supposed to be this way. We had to face this harsh reality of our loss. I made the mistake of wanting to rush past this difficult time because I don't like pain. I don't like being sad. Let's face it, most of us don't. But you know, sometimes we all make that mistake of believing that feeling the sadness or grief or frustration or even anger means that we don't fully understand or trust God, or we have enough faith, or Maybe following Jesus means that we should always be full of joy, hope, and peace. But the Bible tells us a very different story. The Bible is filled with stories of people whose lives were actually really difficult. And so they responded with a full range of emotions like sadness and grief and frustration and anger. The book of Psalms can help us discover how to connect with God. You might think of songs to God are always filled with joy, praise, and stories of victory, but the book of Psalms contains worship songs that are filled with pain, grief, and even anger. These songs are actually called songs of lament. That word lament is a passionate expression of grief or sorrow. These songs of lament are basically facing our sadness instead of ignoring it. It's feeling our sadness instead of numbing it, or working through our sadness instead of just getting over it. In Psalm 22, there was a man named David who expressed honest questions and pleas to God while feeling like everybody was out to get him. It says in Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I still find no rest. David is literally crying out, God, where are you? Why have you abandoned me? Why won't you help me? Do you even hear me? Can you feel that tension, the anger, the fear? There's no happy ending in sight. David is basically shouting to God, I'm not okay with this. This psalm of lament expresses honest, though uncomfortable feelings. It teaches us that lament makes our worship honest. David isn't ignoring life's darkest moments, even when things are difficult. Immediately following Psalm 22, David acknowledges that life is dark and terrifying, even as he sings about God's peace and protection in Psalm 23. It says, the Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. It's because of the darkness that David had to experience in Psalm 22 that David actually learned to trust God in Psalm 23. When David felt alone in Psalm 22, God, why have you left me? He actually learned to say that God is with me. When David felt forgotten in Psalm 22, God, you forgot all about me. Where are you? He actually learned to say that God guides me. When David was in need, he learned to say, God gives me everything I need. Or when he felt exhausted, he learned to say, God makes me new and gives me rest. It's easy to worship God when our lives are great, isn't it? But can we find a way to worship even when things aren't? These Psalms teach us that our worship of God shouldn't just happen during our best, finest moments. But like David, we can worship even in the deepest valleys of fear and desperation because lament makes our worship deeper. We see this in the person of Jesus. After he was betrayed, arrested, beaten, left to suffer and die, it's no surprise he repeated Psalm 22 while he was dying on a cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus knew how his story would end. But in the meantime, Jesus still felt real grief and despair. He still suffered and was filled with sorrow. And by crying out these words, Jesus showed us how to be honest with the sadness that we can feel sometimes. Just as Jesus knew God was with him, even while he was dying, we can be assured that there is hope for us, even if we can't see it yet. Sometimes trust is difficult. Sometimes it's really hard to worship. I get it. But like David, we can trust that God knows our future, even when it feels dark, because lament makes us look for a hope we can't yet see. That even in the midst of our deepest and hardest moments, when life is painful, when that music shifts, we can worship even when it's difficult.